Welcome to another edition of Indigenization Appreciation Hour. This is our second edition actually, and I'm going to focus a bit on the budget, and of course we are also going to talk about indigenization in general. Now, a lot has been heard and said about the defense budget in general. Here we'll focus mostly on the defense budget obviously, and not on the general budget as such. Now, the defense budget in India is a highly contentious topic. As a share of GDP, it has remained flat for almost a decade. Now, let us be clear about something as to what the defense budget is. The defense budget is the budget of the three defense services, which includes the budget of the ordnance factories and DRDO, and is basically arrived at after removing the allocations for Ministry of Defense civil allocations as well as pensions from the overall Ministry of Defense budget. Now, generally speaking, this has remained at around 70% of the total Ministry of Defense budget. When we say what the defense budget as such has remained at around 70% of the defense budget, the Ministry of Defense budget. It was 69% last year, that is for the last fiscal, which was 2021. And we are still there, we haven't got through it yet. And for 21-22, it's actually going to be 72.5%. So that too, for the first time in many years, the defense budget as a share of the total outlay for the Ministry of Defense has actually gone up. Although it has gone up and down before, but this is the first time it has crossed 70% and is actually going to be at around 72.5% as far as the budget estimates for 21-22 are concerned. Now, one thing you must note is that the defense budget of India is obviously broken up into revenue and capital budgets, capital heads, and it's always the revenue budget sort of remains flat. It doesn't go up by that much, and that is something that hasn't changed for a while. It's always the capital budget which is keenly watched. Now, the budgeted capital outlay for 21-22 is 18.5% higher than that for 2021. Now, that may seem like a very appreciable hike, but actually when you compare it to the revised estimates as to what the government expects to spend in 2021, the hike isn't anything really to talk about. It's totally flat, almost flat. It's only 0.4% actually. That is because 21,000 crores is already earmarked in the revised capital estimates for 2021, and the government intends to spend that by the end of this fiscal year, which hasn't ended yet, but will end soon in March, by the end of March obviously. Now, the main thing that we have to note in all of this is that the capital outlay is also not evenly spread amongst the three defense services. The Air Force invariably gets the lion's share, and that is generally, and in recent times it has been followed by the Navy and then by the Army, whose overall allocation is essentially eaten up by the revenue budget, as is to be expected given that it is a million-plus man army and all that. But for the first time in many years, the capital outlay for the army too has seen an appreciable increase under the other equipment heads. Not the capital outlay if you consider it with the revised estimate, but with the budget estimate for the last year, the budget estimate of this year and the budget estimate of last year. And other equipment means not heavy and obviously HMVs or anything, heavy vehicles or medium vehicles, or aircraft and aero engines. Other equipment refers to essentially infantry and artillery equipment. So clearly the situation along the northern borders is leading to greater expense under those heads, and maybe the long overdue modernization of the infantry forces is also underway. Now, before we move to other things, I'd like to also mention another thing here, that we often talk about why can't the capital outlay for the defense forces be higher. do remember that the capital outlay for the defense services is already around a quarter of the total capital outlay by the Indian government in any year. And even this, even for the forthcoming fiscal, it's going to be 24.4%, which is around what it has been for a while now, around a quarter. A quarter of the total capex of the government of India goes towards the Ministry of Defense. So you can understand why I keep talking about the need for indigenization, because if you really want the multiplied effect of capital spending to kick in India, you have to indigenize. You have to ensure you can't allow half of a quarter of your total capital outlay on any year to leak overseas, which is what has happened. In fact, it has been more than that. Almost 60% of capex has leaked overseas year after year, if you take into account everything, license production, imports, everything. So you cannot allow that. You will immediately give India a major boost if you indigenize. Because what it means is that on a year-on-year basis, about 12.5% of the capital expenditure of the government of India straight away goes overseas. There are, of course, other heads through which it leaks out as well, but defense is a major head. So you cannot have that. So you need indigenization. Now let us move to something else. You should note that the government of India has not allocated any budgetary support for defense public sector units for this year, for the forthcoming year. But it's not like they are not going to spend, they are not going to spend on the accretion of capital. They are going to do that, but they are going to do that through what is called IEBR, or internal and extra budgetary resources. So they are going to essentially raise money either on the market, or they're going to use their own internal accruals for the capex. They are not getting any budgetary support from the government of India. Now let us move to something else. Of course, something that is close to our topic and is close to my heart as well. The budget of the Defense Research and Development Organization. Now, as far as the revenue budget of the Defense Research and Development Organization is concerned, it's going to remain mostly, it's going to see an increase of around 400 crores as far as budgetary outlays are concerned. So, I don't know how many more people they're going to recruit with that outlay, or it may just reflect, it doesn't seem to be that, DRDO is going to undergo a major expansion as far as increasing the number of scientists under its ambit is concerned. And its capital budget, of course, also sees a hike, but that too is not anything extraordinary, because which means that this is not going to be a year when we are going to see major new infrastructure come up, say for aero engine testing, etc., or all that, or any new major new facilities or labs. Now I don't see any of that planned this year either. Okay, now one more thing that you must note in all of this is that, this is an important factor here, that the Ministry of Defense ultimately is usually the largest budgetary head for the government of India, and that is not going to change in the coming years. But how the money that is allocated to the Ministry of Defense is spent is another matter, and is therefore very important. And which is why indigenization appreciation are at some level. Okay, some questions are coming in. Let me just turn to a few questions to begin with. Right. Okay, the first question is, what is the update on the Kaveri? Well, there is no update on the Kaveri program as such. The update is related to essentially the non-afterburning version of the Kaveri turbofan, which prototype has been displayed during Aero India as well. And the amount that was sought after by a committee for developing the same was 2652 crores. Although that exact amount was probably not allocated, but it seems that they are serious about making it work, and that particular engine is going to go for testing to Siam soon. That is what we heard at Aero India. Right, let's move to the next question. It's from Apurv Kumar. Is not having an ATGM on LCH one of the main reasons of no orders for LCH? Also, when will Helena complete its testing? Well, Helena is, development trials are going to be wrapped up soon. So I don't see that as a problem. Honestly, I don't think that the lack of orders on LCH, lack of orders for the LCH can be blamed on the lack of ATGM integration. I don't think that is the real reason. But anyway, we will take a look at that. And as far as the Helena is concerned, it is headed into user trials in February 2021. That is the latest, update there. All right, let's go to the next question. This is from Ornab Bhattacharya. India doesn't have its indigenous male UAV yet, and DRDO is claiming to be able to operationalize CATS by 2025. Is it realism or classic DRDO trying to punch above its weight like it did with LCA? I think CATS is a HAL program. CATS is not a Aeronautical Development Establishment program. That is AD. That is the Aeronautical Development Establishment. Is of course the DRDO's flag bearer for UAV development. CATS is not a DRDO program. It's a HAL program. DRDO will says that they'll have good news on the Rustam H soon, the Tapas BH201, which is going to reach its altitude, which is going to demonstrate its that is its altitude ceiling of 30,000 feet, and also demonstrate around 24 hours of endurance. So I think you'll hear something about the Tapas BH201 soon, but it is not. This is not. I think CATS is something that HAL probably will be able to implement. Right. So let's move to the next question. I am asked, do we have money for P-75I submarines? Good question. The thing is that if you look at the Navy's capital outlay, it is around 6,000 crores higher than the budget estimate that was given in 2021. I mean, I'm talking about the budget estimate for 21-22. It's 6,000 crores higher, but it's actually quite a bit lower than the revised estimate. And a lot of the Navy's capex seems to be going towards aircraft and aero engines. So I don't see P-75 seeing the light of day in this fiscal. I mean, it's not going to be out of the stovepipe and into the light. Maybe the fiscal after that. Okay, let's go to the next question. Praveen Singh asks, is there a separate section for indigenous product in the defense budget? No, not if you look at the defense budget as it has been revealed. I don't think there is any other, there is a separate section, not yet. That hasn't been operationalized. I know there was a promise of this sort, but that is not the case. Next question, Ornab Bhattacharya asks, why aren't we making our own conventional subs but investing more on SSBN, etc.? Is it harder to make them than SSBN? No, it is not. It's actually, SSBN obviously has a separate role. It's for our nuclear deterrent. Even today, despite, progress in certain kinds of ISR technologies, the nuclear ballistic missile submarine continues to be the most secure second strike capability that a country could have. So it is not surprising that India is investing in SSBNs. And as far as this issue of conventional subs and nuclear subs, which one is easier to make, there are challenges for both. Now you see, you might be able to make a conventional sub more easily than a nuclear sub, but it won't be terribly quiet. On the other hand, you might make a nuclear submarine, but you may have a reactor that will not, will require refueling maybe every 3 to 5 years. So it'll have to come to port. The hull will have to be cut open. There are many issues over there. So it's actually. But if you want to making a cutting edge nuclear submarine is definitely more difficult than making a cutting edge conventional submarine because of the nuances of the reactor technology involved. I'll probably do a IAH on nuclear issues, and then I'll talk about naval reactors and what are the requirements, what are the kind of factors that go into making a successful naval reactor, etc. and all that. But that's a story for another day. Let's go to a different question. Okay, Parth asks, please speak on 114 jets order. Don't you think we should go for Rafale, make in India F4 version? We can't trust USA completely. I think Rafale seems to be the most likely choice, isn't it? I mean, it seems the most sane choice, but then I can understand why a competition is being run, because you don't want any one OEM to think that they've got a lock on the Indian government's choices, you know. So you would want to have this degree of what should I say? You would want to have a situation where you can sort of shake them down to give you what you want. Okay, Geeta P asks, do you foresee Tejas export fructifying anytime soon? Which countries? One second, let me just repeat that. Do you foresee Tejas export fructifying anytime soon? Which countries do you think will vouch for it? BDSL, Malaysia or Armenia? Well, the HAL seems to be very confident that they will be able to secure a major export order sooner than later. And it is a country in Southeast Asia that seems to be interested. If I were to venture a guess, this is speculation on my part, please do note, I think it might be Indonesia. But then that is just speculation on my part. Okay, Ajay P. Kumar asks, why is the army refusing to restructure? This is a question best posed to the army, but let us be clear about one thing. The army needs to restructure. The army needs to get out of counterinsurgency. And maybe the army needs to look at its actual manpower requirements subsequent to that. Let's go to the next question. So we have a question here which is about, right, so we have a question from Vatsal Singh. What are the updates on EM Railgun, Project 18 cruiser class destroyers and XR SAM? Okay, let's go one by one. See, XR SAM, which used to be called VLR SAM at one time, will require CCS sanction. It's going to be a major project. So when it actually gets off the ground, you will hear about it, because you will hear about the CCS sanction for the same. It requires certain new developments, obviously, on the sensor front. Anyway, let's keep it at that. Let's come to the one in the middle about Project 18 cruiser class destroyers. What is the update on that? There is no update right now. As you can see, the Navy's capex has not really been increased by the kind of by the proportion that you would think would support a major new destroyer program. Then what is the update on EM Railgun? There are no updates on this at the moment, but ARD is working on them. DRDO has a lab called ARD, which obviously works on armaments, and it is the one working on this, as has been revealed in their annual reports before, earlier annual reports. Now let's go to the next question. Like Apur Kumar asks, is not having ATGM on LCH? I have answered this question actually. Let me go to the next. Update on Swift. There's no update per se. We should see it fly this year. You've seen a model displayed at Aero India. But frankly speaking, we are at the stage where we are thinking of flying a scaled down technology demonstrator. We should have already gone to the point where we were actually flying a full-scale demonstrator, but that is not happening right now, as you can see. Right, let's go to another question. We have a question from Shoptorshi DG, who asks, should India buy dedicated electronic warfare aircraft EA-18 Growler? No, I don't think India should buy a separate, just import a type for the, EW or Wild Weasel roles, what used to be called Wild Weasel in NATO parlance. The best thing to do over here is to outfit an Su-30 MKI for this role, and if you are talking about the navalized, then maybe some more MiG-29K should be bought and outfitted for this role if possible. Right, let's go to another question. Rajesh Karode asks, a surprise in Aero India was Warrior Companion UAV. Any update on updated Kaveri? Conflicting reports. One report said remade fan capable. I would stay away from the remade fan reports, etc. and all that. What you see is what you get. What you see right now is a non-afterburning version of the Kaveri, which will be used for the UCAP program, which is no longer apparently called the Ghatak project. It will be given some other name, which will be shared with you by DRDO when they are ready to share it. So there is no update there. And as far as successor to the Kaveri is concerned, it will require a huge amount of capital outlay, and will require a consortium approach, which HAL has been talking about, DRDO has been talking about, etc. But it will essentially be, and it will obviously have a, it will require a foreign collaborator. Next question. Here's a question by Prasad Sawant. Having Astra, Meteor and Derby, why India procuring Russian BVRs? Because they are compatible with the Russian fleet that you have. you can, and it's very simple. It's like, it's like this. If you have Su-30 MKIs and MiG-29s in your fleet, you are definitely going to buy Russian weapons for those. You may integrate the Astra with the Su-30 MKI, but there are like there's no equivalent of the, the, say, the R-73 right now. Of course, you're talking about BVRs, but you would want some versions of the R-27 EP also, etc., etc. There's a logistical aspect over there. There is an aspect of keeping the Russians interested, so that they keep supplying you with spares, because even missiles have a shelf life and they need repairs as well, etc. Now let's go to the next one. Saurav, why Navy prefers TEDBF on AMC and Navy? I don't think the Navy prefers. First of all, there is no AMC and Navy, and navalizing a fighter developed for the Air Force is not easy. We have addressed this question before. And as far as the TEDBF is concerned, seems a bit of a hedging strategy to me. I mean, what is the point of pursuing TEDBF development when you also seem to want this, MRCBF, multi-role carrier-borne fighter? I mean, a Rafale M and a TEDBF are not going to be so different from each other after all. So it seems like the Navy is pursuing some kind of a hedging strategy. They are seeing which one comes to fruition. So ideally, I think see, I'll tell you, I'll share something. President Kalam, the late President Kalam, head of DRDO at one time, used to say this: that's only when you develop an Arjun that people are ready to offer you T-90s and Abrams. So maybe, I don't know, is that the thought process here as well? They develop a TEDBF so that you can get a better deal on the MRCBF front. I'm not quite clear here. I think the Navy should be asked this question. Let's go to the next question here. Aman Rutre asks, Safran just signed a MOU with HAL for high thrust engine. Has DRDO started the work with RR? No, DRDO has not started work with either. Years of proposals have been on DRDO tables from both these players, Safran and RR. Safran at that time, SNECMA, which is now Safran obviously, and RR. But it doesn't mean that it has started work with either. When it does start work, you will hear about it, because this too will require CCS sanction. So please, I know there are a lot of channels on YouTube which just have these very catchy and sensational sort of presentations of this has happened, this is the big news, this is the news that is coming in. That's not how these things are. Believe me, if something had happened, I would know before they would. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, we have another question here. It's a question by Rishabh Kumar. Please talk about DRDO EW pods displayed in Aero India and its prospects for integration Mark 1A. Look, obviously they can be integrated with Mark 1A, but they also depends on the the load bearing capacity of the pylons that the Mark 1A has. But let's not talk about the specifics of the EW pods beyond what is there on brochures already, because this is a sensitive area. So I'll skip this. Now the next question is from Apur Kumar. Is NGCCM a new development or just ASRAM? It's just ASRAM. When you hear the term NGCCM, that is the Indian term for the ASRAM. NGCCM integration on the Jaguar, NGCCM integration on the Su-30 MKI. NAL has actually done tests on that. NGCCM integration on the Mark 1A also, Tejas Mark 1A, that is. Just the ASRAM. Now let's go to the next question. So, Nishant, how well are we prepared to defend against drone attacks like the ones in Armenia conflict, and are we anywhere close to having strike capability with drones? I had shared an article I had written an article in 2015, and DRDO had shared an image with me of a Rustam 1 with a couple of Dhruva, what is now called Dhruvas, Helenas under wing. So we can weaponize. It's not so difficult to weaponize even the Rustam 1. I mean, it's not so easy either, because weapons release is a major area. There are structural issues, there are aerodynamic issues, all that is there. But it can be done. And as far as being prepared to defend against drone attacks, I think we are prepared, both electronically as well as with kinetic kill measures. I won't go into details. Next question, because something like the what should I say? Something like what you saw used in Armenia it's not going to last very long against Indian air defenses during an actual conflict. During a no war, no peace situation, they have greater utility. Now let us go to something else. Nishant, how will Ashish Had asks, any plan to turn guided Pinaka into an air-launched missile like Israeli Rampage? Not that I have heard of, but yes, not just a guided Pinaka. You can even turn the AAD, or which is similar to the the Prahar. Even that can be turned into an air-launched missile. And air-launched ballistic missiles are under quasi-air-launched aeroballistic missiles are under development. As if you've seen DRDO's tenders, you'll understand that. But I won't give any details here. Nitish Sarangi asks, what can we expect from Su-30 upgrade? How difficult is it to mate Uttam or Israeli ESA? Actually, as far as the Su-30 is concerned, I don't think it will be that difficult for India to mate other weapons, because the source code, according to some people and according to some reports, may not be opaque to India. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's go to the next one. Rohit Pandey, regarding 5th generation fighters, is it the right direction, for example, for IF to pursue an F-35 approach, all-in-one versus mission-specific aircraft? How do you see AMCS shaping up? Well, IF is not interested in mission-specific aircraft anymore. And even the F-35 is not a mission-specific aircraft. I mean, Lockheed Martin will tear its hair if it heard that. AMCA is also going to be a multi-role 5th generation, 5.5 generation aircraft, actually, given its various features. So I think the AMCA will shape up well, but then, as you know, when it comes to the AMCA will essentially be used to break down the door. That is when it will fly in LO mode towards enemy targets using only its internal weapons bay. I mean, it'll have weapons carriage only in internal weapons bay. Later on, of course, as the conflict progresses and the enemy's door has been broken down, then you might see the AMCA in more of a bombing truck role with a lot of underwing weapons, etc., underslung weapons. So that is how the AMCA will go, and AMCA in the air-to-air regime will also be quite competitive against anything that we have in this neighborhood, because it's going to have a beast of a radar. It's going to have other things as well. It's going to also have other sensors. It's going to have proper sensor fusion, etc. The general 5th generation roster. So I think it will shape up well, but money has to be allocated so that it goes into full-scale engineering development sooner than later. See, we are going through one iteration of Aero India after another, with ADA essentially displaying models. This is not how things should be. Just having models and seeing various iterations and geeking out on all the iterative changes that are happening, that is all right when you're very enthusiastic about these things. But if you ask me, we should have already entered full-scale engineering development for the AMCA by now, and the reason why it hasn't happened isn't technical, isn't in the realm of technological challenges only. It has a lot to do with the money that has been allocated as well. Let's go to the next question. Rohit Pandey asks, regarding 5th generation fighters, is it the right direction? For example, no, I've already answered this, sorry. Let's go to one more. Vishal Kumar asks, what's happening in Ladakh? Are we returning to status quo or not? Do you see us returning to status quo? Let me keep it there. When status quo happens, you will hear about it. The MEA will let you know. M. Anirudh asks, sir, please have these in. Yes, I'll once every month. I'm trying to do it on a fortnightly basis. Thank you for your inputs, M. Anirudh. Okay. Then we have another question from Fusion Fame. Are HAL and Boeing the only companies to work on CATS type systems? If they are not, there are companies in our neighbors, the companies of our northern neighbor who are also working on similar systems. They are not the only ones, and there are others as well. You will see such concepts now everywhere. Okay, let's go to another question here. Praveen Singh, what's the way ahead on the Super Sukhoi upgrade? I think whatever can be done in India domestically should be done without any further delay. And I think the Uttam ESA should be considered. Successor to the Uttam ESA should be considered for this upgrade. There are other elements also which can be integrated with the Su-30MK, which has, relatively speaking, a lot of space for upgrades. Now let's look at another question here. IM asks, why IMRH program, IMRH, that is the Indian Multi-Role Helicopter Program, does not include fuel cells and electric propulsion given the time of, this is a time of induction, given the time of induction 2028, 2035. I know a lot of people, just a priori say, oh, this is an old looking design, oh, this isn't sexy enough, or this isn't hot enough. Is that how, airframe design works? IMRH has to be a good replacement for the Mi-17. It does not need a blue sky approach. It does not require fuels, does not have to incorporate fuel cells and electric propulsion. And in any case, let fuel cells and electric propulsion first make it to the civilian side of things as far as the aerospace industry is concerned. I don't see the military developments leading it. I really don't. The IMRH has to be an indigenous and useful alternative to the Mi-17, and which it can be, most certainly. And that is all that it needs to be. Okay, we have another question here from Manish Panwar, who asks 36 more Rafale or Mk2 full thrust? Mk2 should be full thrust, but as you can see, it depends on budgetary resources. I don't think the Air Force is going to settle for 36 more Rafale either. They want those 114 MMRCAs. And if you look at the situation going forward in this decade, they probably will be able to make their case, more strongly as time goes by. But even with the MMRCA going through, you have to put an emphasis on the Mk2 anyway, because you cannot have, the Tejas line just stop, or Tejas production just stop with another 73 plus 10, Mark 1A and 10 trainers. You can't have that. So you need the Mark II. You need something to pull routine stops in the future. Mark 1A will do that, but Mark II will do it even better. You need something that is like, a Mirage 2000 plus, a Mirage 2000 upgrade plus, and that is what the Tejas Mark II will be. Okay, here's a question. So your take on the third aircraft carrier, do you see it happening? Where are the budgetary resources for it? I had written an article when I said that you're not going to see any serious movement on this before 2022 as far as file pushing is concerned. And it depends. I mean, if the Navy is willing to settle for a slightly larger IAC one, then I think it can happen. I mean, the case can be moved in this decade. Otherwise, it will be towards the end of the decade if they are hell-bent on getting a large EMOLS carrier with Americans with loads of American inputs. I really don't see it being fast-tracked that simply. It also, of course, depends on the progress of the Indian economy. Okay, does Akash NG have an Narendranath Mistry asks, does Akash NG have an ESA-based seeker? No, it does not. It does not have an ESA-based seeker. It does not have an ESA-based seeker. It has a mechanically scanned seeker only, as you have seen in Aero India. Right. So, okay, Ajay P. Kumar asks, will we be able to develop an IRST? Do we have the capability? Yeah, we are developing. IRD is developing an IRST, by the way. IRD is in the process of developing an IRST. Of course, one of the reasons why you saw the IRST on the Tejas Mark II being shifted from one side to the other is because that is the imported IRST that you're seeing on the models right now. Those that can apparently be only fitted on the the starboard side of the aircraft. Why that is the case is a different matter, and I'm not going to go into it right now. Okay, now another question that is being asked is, okay, Rohit Pandey asks, is the current government and bureaucracy, in your opinion, actively targeting and removing impact of external actors to stifle progression and indigenization of tech overall? This is difficult to say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. All I would say is that those who are in favor of indigenization must stay in its favor and must keep supporting it. And ultimately, some things do not really depend on the government of the day. They depend on the time. And I think the time for indigenization is almost here. Okay, then let's go to another question. Right, we have a question from Alok Galge who asked, should we buy older Mirages from UAV? I actually have the opinion that we should look at this seriously, given our current situation. It will also depend on the price and other factors, but it should be looked at. Okay, well, the other question, Krishna Char asks, an Air Force variant of TEDBF should be prioritized instead of MRCA. Your thoughts? No, it won't be. And the Air Force, the TEDBF has had to make many compromises to be a navalized fighter. I don't think the Air Force will be interested in a TEDBF derivative, whether you call it Orca or not. Although, theoretically speaking, it is always easier to, create a land-based variant of something that started off as a navalized fighter. Incidentally, even in the case of nuclear reactors, 85% of the designs that you see today, the pressurized water reactor designs, they all started off as naval nuclear reactor designs. But of course, I don't want to draw this parallel beyond the point anyway. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let's go to another question. Right, so we have a question here from Welcome Today's News, which asks, hello, भारत ने जो 156 तरह के हथियारों को बेचने की परमिशन दी है, उसके बारे में please give some updates. I think you're going to see more and more exports in the coming years. You know, there's a big there's a target of reaching 35,000 crores in annual exports, right? Reaching a target of, there's a target that India has to reach about 35,000 crores of annual exports from the defense sector. I think you're going to see a lot of progress on that front. Obviously, if some big ticket item can be sold like the Tejas, Tejas Mark 1 or Mark 1A, or like the Arjun, then you'll meet that target very easily. But India seems to be working towards that target. Now, this is one thing that the government of the day has probably, has done well in, by targeting this, setting a stiff target. It might work. Okay, let's go to another question here. We have a question from from Vasily Zetsev, written in Cyrillic. Yes, I can read that. DSI on MWF. I think this is a question best asked to Ada. You might have seen a few videos from I think Tarmac and all, where they are talking about similar matters. But TEDBF and AMC all obviously have DSI. Maybe you'll see a Tejas Mark II, or Mark II-B with DSI intakes, just like the J10 has progressed. Maybe you'll see something like that. But not for the first prototypes, no. Right, Alok Galge, okay, Nitin Wali asks, has India evaluated the Kawasaki P1 and would it fit for its Make in India program? The Japanese, I don't know whether India has evaluated the Kawasaki P1 or not to my knowledge. Secondly, developments from Japan like the P1 petrol aircraft or the C1 transport jet, Make in India, it's not going to be so simple. License production of either of these is not going to prove simple or very cost effective. When it comes up, you will know what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's go to another one. Let's circle back to some questions that I skipped because I wanted to give everyone a chance to ask a question. Let's go back to some of those older questions. Right, so we have a question here. We have another question from Parth. So what's the update on Kalyani, ULH, artillery and ATACs? Please wait for DDR's interview with Baba Kalyani for these. We had a wide-ranging interview with Baba Kalyani, who's of course founder and head of the Kalyani group, and we will share it shortly. You will have these questions answered over there. Then we have another question here from Vatsal Singh. We have answered this, sorry. Is Kali weapon a reality? Let's be clear, okay? Kali is kilo ampere linear injector, okay? It is basically generates relativistic, electron beams. So it can be used theoretically. It can be used as a radio frequency. As a directed energy weapon. But it's not what, there are a lot of these videos on YouTube doing the rounds which make no sense at all. Please just search Kali 5000 and all, and you'll understand what we are doing here. Right? It's a Marx generator basically. Now let's go to the next one. Generating relativistic electron beams. Is Surya ICBM a real possibility? Whether you call it Surya or not, you'll see new ICBMs in the future for sure. I don't want to. Then this is my view, by the way. Please don't think that this is what DRDO is saying. This is just my opinion. Now let's go to the next one. Okay, we have another question here. We have another question right here. I've answered all of these actually. Okay, Geeta P asks, is Helena the same as Dhruastra or do they have internal difference like in TVC? It's basically the same. Even that basic airframe may see changes over time in terms of, control surfaces and all that. So nothing out of the ordinary, but basically the same. Right, next let's go to the same, let's go to another question. Okay, we have a question here. One second. Okay, I answered this already. Narendranath Mistry asks, HAL said they may get the contract of Tejas Mark 1A from one SEA country. Any idea which country it will be and what's the order size? I speculated about this. I said it's probably Indonesia, but it's a guess. It's not what I have heard or anything. Okay, Rohit Pandey asks, also not defense tech, but where would you gauge the thorium reactor? I have written extensively about all this. I'll do IAHS dedicated to nuclear issues. I'll answer these questions then. This is more of a defense IAH. Then we have another question from IM. FARA program of USS contestants with Heelys proved with powered with fuel cells and electric vehicles. See what gets selected. I'm aware of the FARA program. See what gets selected and what is really going to happen there. And but just because they have a program and they may select something that has electric drives doesn't mean we have to go down that path per se. There are no points, especially in the military realm, for being a pioneer of some kind of propulsion technology, which has not become completely mature yet. It can give you an advantage, or it can prove a big bondongle. I'm sure you've been following what has been happening with the Ford class carriers and the problems they are having with the EMOLs. So it's not something they've sorted out yet. Maybe one day they'll sort it out with a lot of money, but it's not working as it should right now. Please do check. Let's go to another question here, which is, sir, APS, M. Anirudh asks, APS being developed by DRDO for tanks. You'll hear about this when there is an update. There are no comment as of now. Okay, so we have another question here which says, what's happening with the Pralay missile? No news recently. Doesn't that say it all? I think you've got your answer. Then there's another question there from Rohit Pandey with regards to Astra Mark II. Apart from range, how does it fare with respect to Meteor? Meteor is I think just a priori you can say that the no escape zone of the Meteor is probably larger than that of the Astra Mark II. This is a dual pulse propulsion system. That of course is a ramjet power system and all that. So end game closing and all that, there'll be differences. But there's something that is under development which is tentatively called the Astra Mark III, which will definitely match the Meteor. Okay, we have another question here. By what year can we have 60? I have a 66 plus squadrons with IAF. Well, that is the year when I am the Prime Minister of India. That is the you will get it. I'm joking, obviously, but it doesn't seem on the cards right now. The IF is struggling to get to sustain even half that number. Apparently, with the Tejas Mark 1A, they will not fall below 30 squadrons. So, they may, with better budgetary support, they may be able to build up to 42 squadrons by 2031 or so. And if really that is India again goes through a major growth boom and the situation in our neighborhood remains what it is, then maybe they'll get to it earlier, because then more money will be allocated. And that is where having a hot Tejas Mark II line and a proper Tejas ecosystem is so important, because that is what will help you get there eventually. Now we have another question here. We have a question from Vishal Kumar. Is Embraer once in a lifetime opportunity? It's not once in a lifetime, but it is a serious opportunity in my opinion. Should be looked at more closely. But then I don't know if the government and the HAL together will have the wherewithal to actually buy it off just like that, given the numerous allocations that have to be made for economic recovery and other defense expenditure and all sorts of other heads, obviously, and of course developmental expenditures, especially on healthcare. So maybe an Indian consortium should be in an Indian consortium with public and private entities could look at taking over Embraer if that is doable at all. That is what should be looked at. And given that funds are available at very low prices, leverage buyout might be possible. I mean, on the international market, but it's best to have a public-private approach, a consortium look at taking over Embraer. In fact, something that India should consider is creating a public-private consortium for certain aerospace projects. Apart from, of course, what is going to be done for the AMCA or the Kaveri follow-on. Okay, we are now going to the last set of questions. Okay, we have a question from Alok Galge. Are some of the defense purchases done to keep strategic partnerships? Seems like it, doesn't it? Otherwise, it is difficult to understand why certain things are being bought at huge expense. But yeah, it would seem like that. It is part of the overall relationship that India has with some major powers in the world. And frankly speaking, it has to find the money for indigenization sooner than later, because you cannot keep buying 10 of those and 12 of those, gold plated systems and duly covered by XYZ media and spoken about in glowing terms and think that you are secure. You are not going to be secure till you have your own weapons and platforms with full design control. Let us be clear about this. Then we have another question here, which is it's from Vasily Zetsev again. Do integrated battle groups exist today? They've been trialed. I think it has been reported also that integrated battle groups under the Brahmastra Corps, that is the 17 Corps based in Panagarh, have been used in exercises on the eastern frontier. So it's all under development actually, these concepts. Integrated battle groups, as I see it, and this is my view only, are going to be similar to what the movements that you've seen elsewhere in the world, like the brigade combat team in the US Army, or the composite brigades that you're seeing in the People's Liberation Army ground force. It's a move towards it's especially in the mountains. It is felt that something that is smaller than a division is probably optimal. But then when exercises happen, then people start talking about, there is a need for a signals unit to be attached to it, also a dedicated signal unit. A lot of, divisional or even corps level assets will have to be added to something like an integrated battle group. Again, this is my view. For it to be really effective for the role that, it is supposed to execute. But this is not the view of the Indian Army. This is only my view and my assessment, nothing more. Then let us go to some more questions. Apurv Kumar asks, can we buy Motor Sikh from Ukraine? The same thing, it's the same kind of answer to Embraer. Theoretically you can, but there are other contenders, and it's a question of whether you have enough, you can spare the funds for it or not. Okay, then we have another question here about from Fusion Fame. It's, can IF consider strategic bomber? We've covered this before. The IF will have to look at strategic bombers sooner than later. I think I don't see it leasing some B-1Bs though from America, although a B-1B did that entire fly past and was escorted by a Tejas, and that made waves and all that. If the IF does lease any strategic bombers, I would think that Tu-160 is a more likely prospect. But let's see what happens on that front. And as far as our own developments are concerned, in the 2030s, we will have to work on a strategic bomber. There's no question about it. There's no money for it right now, obviously. The money is not even being allocated properly for fighter programs. So what about there's no point talking about a strategic bomber. Okay, we have another question here from FBACC. Foreign SLBMs of same size go 15,000 kilometers. Do they have better propulsion, some other better tech? No, they don't. And I won't say anything more. Okay, Vishal Kumar asks, sir, India has already got Trichy assault rifle, then why AK from Russia? Please go and ask this question to the Ministry of Defense and the Indian Army. Because obviously I have not been an infantry soldier, right? So infantry soldiers have, and infantrymen who become generals have very clear ideas about what they want. So let them make the decision on this. I won't say anything. Right, let's go to another question here. We have more questions there. What's the update of Arjun Mark II? Aman Rutre asks. Arjun Mark II is, there's a public-private sort of approach to reducing the weight of the Arjun Mark 1A. And Arjun Mark II is currently under development, the hull and all. It has been covered in earlier, DRDO annual reports. As far as the Arjun Mark 1A is concerned, you are going to see the order for that soon, I think. I think that is now almost, it's on the anvil. So 118 Arjun Mark 1As are probably going to be, ordered by the Indian Army and cleared by the government. Okay, we have more questions here. Nitish Shangi, do we have any fighters in reserve or storage? Maybe older ones maintained for emergency? Seriously, I'm not going to answer this question. Okay, we have another question here from M. Anirudh, which is, are the older Dhruvs undergoing upgrade on glass cockpit? Heard they were being upgraded in Israel. Where did you hear this? I would also like to know where you heard this. So send me a link on my Twitter feed if you can. Right. So, okay, Fusion Fame says B-1 bomber in IF will be a reality. Let's see. Geeta P asks, do you think NUH RFI will get the boot for Dhruv? The Navy doesn't seem to be too keen on that, is it? There's this whole war that is going on about whether, the Dhruv can be pushed in for that or not. Let's see, let's watch this. Watch this space for more. I would only say this. Right, so Visha, is JF-17 with P-15 a serious threat? Well, it can't be discounted. Can't be said a priori that, oh, it's rubbish, it's nonsense. Can't say that, but it's not all that it is made out to be, and I'm sure proper ECM can be developed for it. And let's just keep it there. Okay, we have another question from Vineet R. Is there any scope for a stealthy jet for the Navy? There doesn't seem to be any scope. Is there any scope? The Navy, like I argued in the beginning of this program, is working on, seems to be hedging its bets with the TEDBF. On one side it is doing the TEDBF, on the other the MRCBF, and none of those are stealthy. TEDBF is not a stealthy fighter. It doesn't have serpentine intakes or anything. And it's, it is, obviously there is some, it seems to have a chined forebody and all that, but it's not really, it's not a stealthy fighter. And as far as the Rafale M and F-18 Super Hornet are concerned, those are not stealthy either. Now, if you're thinking whether the Navy wants to buy the F-35 or not, I don't see the Navy buying either the F-35B or the F-35C. So no stealthy fighter is on the cards for the Navy. Right. Okay, there are some residual questions related to, lift, the sport, basically lift and sport from the HAL stable and the OFB Beltfeld LMG. Will Negev be enough? Negev seems to be the order of things right now, and now some Negev, as has been reported, Negev units have already been delivered as well. They are already under delivery. And as far as the lift or the sport is concerned, please wait for updates on DDR's website. We'll have some. Okay, last question. We have a last question from Alok Galge. When will Navig be used for missiles or civic navigation? It was told with much fanfare. Well, Navig is making its way here and there. So you'll see more of that. See, it's like this. GPS is much more than what it seems. And right now, I think the approach is to get refined GPS signals. That is the Gagan essentially. Right? So that is where we are, and we have these. We have receivers that can. We have systems that can receive multi-constellation updates. So let's keep it there. Okay, we have a question from Shashwata Das. Updates on Indigenous 7.62 into 51. Well, what is the update? There's no update to be had. It's on a OFB brochure, and that's about it. It didn't really make it to the army, did it? So what used to be called the R2 basically. Okay, Praveen Singh asks, the new Tata aircraft, the Grove design basically. Yeah, I think you're going to hear more of that in the time to come, in times to come. And I think it would be a good fit for the COMJAM requirement of the Indian Air Force. But let's see how things progress. Okay, we have now the last question of the day, absolutely, because I'm not going to take any more. Explain the philosophy of cats. How will HAL cats, hunted and HAL swarm UAV carriers survive a SAM missile from enemy which can easily take up to 40 G tons and easily hunt these down? No. The whole point of manned unmanned teaming is that you'll overwhelm enemy air defenses. So essentially the main carrier aircraft will be way behind. It will be outside the engagement envelope, and this will be a mix of stuff. These things will have very interesting EW payloads, and that is what will open the door essentially. And there'll be some which will be used as decoys, some which will be used as EW carriers, some which will be used as relays. So it'll be a mix of things. It'll be a mesh essentially. It's not so easy to shoot down. And how many missiles will you be able to lob at them? That is the whole point of swarming anyway. You have a heterogeneous swarm, and the heterogeneous swarm is very large. It's not so easy for any current day air defense system to take care of. I'll write on this, on what actually happens and what the concept is. Don't have enough time to explain it here. Anyway, this will be all for today, for this edition of Indigenization Appreciation Hour. I hope you got some value out of it. I'll see you in a fortnight's time. Thank you.